the big advantage I had over my competitors, I had all this extra time and money because I wasn't wasting it going to college. Because I asked him, how did you get to, that size? Sean Fanning, whose creation of Napster at age 18 dealt a body blow to the music industry, which I don't believe it's going to actually recover from. And that's good. I used to be a songwriter. And who has been hired at age 24 by the music industry he nearly ruined to try to save it, has no degree, and he has no intention of getting one. Lou Wasserman, who more than anyone else on earth created the modern Hollywood with his MCA talent agency, not only has no college degree, he didn't go to high school, although he has a high school diploma. So how did he get a high school diploma if he didn't attend? Well, he was working as a movie usher. He was registered in high school, but he wanted to make some money. So he was working as a movie usher from 3 in the afternoon until midnight, and then he wanted to sleep, and have a life, not go to school. So Wasserman goes to the high school principal, and he said, I read in the papers you're in a lot of trouble because you can't afford band instruments and uniforms for the football team. I've got an idea. I'll borrow the print of the latest movie. It's sitting there. Nobody's in the movie except me. I got the keys. I'll race it over to the high school. We'll show the latest movie at the high school for a small admissions price. You'll take the money, buy the tubas or whatever, and I'll race the print back. That's how Lou Wasserman got his high school diploma. It was a horse trade. Warren Buffett, the world's second richest man, began as a door-to-door Coca-Cola salesman at age 6. Now we've got somebody who's approaching the magic age 4. He was 6. It was the Depression. Omaha, Nebraska is like the outback as far as temperature is concerned. There was no air conditioning. So this guy, age 6, fills a basket with Coca-Colas and ice, goes from door to door, no trouble selling them, and makes a penny a bottle. Doesn't sound like much, but he progressed by stages. He hired people to do that and gave them half a penny a bottle, and now he's retrieving lost golf balls, first at one course, but when he sets up a deal with the club pro to buy the balls that he fishes out of the water hazards in the woods, he then does all the golf courses in Omaha. He's 9, I think. He hires people to do it. He has the contract to sell them. He pays them a fair amount of money, and now he has 2 streams of revenue. And then what does he do? Well, he reads in the paper that there are actually people, impatient people, at the racetrack who, when their horse is behind, tear their ticket up and storm out of the track, and then their horse wins the race. So Buffett sets up this operation. First, it's just him. He fills garbage bags with discarded tickets, and sure enough, here and there's a winner. And then he hires people to collect the stubs and do the sifting under his direction. And now he has another stream of revenue. Now he's 13, I believe. I get all this information from his autobiography. I think he's 13, and he runs away from home. Omaha, Nebraska's in the middle of the United States. It would be like Ayers Rock here, okay? He runs away to Washington, D.C., and he gets a paper route. Now, delivering newspapers is something I did. It's not bad work, but it's not hard. I mean, it's not easy work either. It's so especially at the beginning when you're carrying around 80 papers is a big root. That's what I had. Warren Buffett didn't deliver 80 papers a day. He delivered 1,500 papers a day. How was that possible to do? Here's how. Buffett studies the configuration of the nation's capital, finds a section where there's tall apartment buildings with hundreds of families in each building, makes a deal with the Washington Post to deliver the newspapers not to the lobby where they are, but to deliver them to the roof. He gets on the elevator, races up to the roof, grabs the papers, comes down, throwing them out. As he comes down, goes to the next building. As soon as he's got this perfected, of course, he hires people to do this for him. Now Buffett has 4 streams of revenue coming in. The Washington Post offered him the job. He's a teenager, an early teenager, as circulation director, but he knows that jobs are for chumps. The next business I just take such pleasure in. He's always looking around to see how he can add value to other people's lives. You're hot, you're sweaty, you want a nice cold Coca-Cola. You don't want to pay for a new golf ball. Hey, this one's all like new, etc., etc. The next idea he comes up with, I would have made him president of the universe. It used to be, I don't think it is anymore, but it used to be in many places that the barber shop was the center of town. I mean, you'd hang out if you were a kid near the barber shop if the barber would let you, because all these people came in. It was like a bar almost. And while they're waiting to get their hair cut, you know, there's a lot of chatter goes on. But Buffett noticed that there were people who had to wait a long time to get a haircut, and maybe they would like to do something like play pinball machines. So here's what Buffett does. Using the yellow pages of the phone directory, he finds businesses that lease pinball machines. Then he goes to the barber shops and he says, I'll install the machine, I'll handle the finances, we'll split 50-50 on the profits, and I'll remove the machine if you don't want it anymore. You'd have to be a fool to say no to that. Costs you nothing. But he's this, you know, this 14, 15-year-old boy. He can't drive the pinball. No, but he finds a trucking service to bring the machines to the barber shops. I mean, at some point, he's got 100 barber shops renting pinball machines to. It's another stream of revenue. Now, I challenge you to find anything at all in any of the businesses Buffett had working for him that your own kids couldn't do, that you couldn't do. Buffett arrived at the age of 18 with the equivalent. He paid all his own living expenses past, I think, the age of 12. He had $100,000 in the bank. I mean, it was like 1939 or something. That was a lot of money, you know. There's nothing he did that you couldn't do. My grandfather used to say, making money in business is, he had carnivals, and my grandfather had a lot of businesses, but he was a German, though. They think better than we Italians. I know that because Darwin said so. My grandfather said, the secret in business is to watch other people and find out what they want. And if you can give them what they want, cheaper than somebody else or better than somebody else, or you're the only one offering it, like used golf balls, you know, you'll make money. He said it really is that simple. The key is not thinking, what business do I want to go in? It's looking at other people. One of the standard things I did with 12 and 13-year-old kids, I had to deal with them. Naturally, I cleared it with their mother. Never bothered with their fathers, but I cleared it with their mothers that you could cut school for days or weeks if what you were doing was sizing up the neighborhood or some part of the city and providing evidence for the kind of business you thought that with a little bit of capital, a little bit, you know, under $100, that you could get underway. I had a boy in 1968 who ended up on page 2 of a major New York newspaper. He was making more money than his mother and father put together, and they were not poor. They had good social service incomes. What was he doing? Well, you could do. He was walking dogs. How is that possible? Well, first of all, it helps if you're in a place where the population's densely packed together. You know, big apartment buildings. A lot of dogs in those buildings. Old people like me, we don't feel like riding down 12 floors on an elevator and scooping poop, you know. Now, if you can walk 3 dogs at a time, and what about people who go on vacation? Who's going to feed their beloved fish? Their neighbors are sick of doing that. Their mother won't do it either. You know, there's millions of animals to be serviced. It's a natural for young people. And the minute he knew how to do these different jobs, his name Brian Bantry, he became a Broadway producer when he was 21. He had a lot of money. Brian hired other people. I mean, what school kid doesn't want some money in his kick or her kick, you know? I see 5 minutes and I have got to hurry. Wait. I'll skip this part. Okay. St. Paul and the Rule Book Dragon. You got to get the last 2 parts. 5 minutes. That's what she said I have. In the New Testament, Paul's letters to the congregations, which later would become Christianity, are filled with a fervent plea, which a lot of Christians overlook, to ignore the rules and think afresh. Rules had led the establishment of his time astray, and Paul says repeatedly in the letters, you can't find salvation by following the rules. Think of Shen Wen Rong's steel demolition crew. Think of Marilee Jones at MIT. Now, screen the religious content out of that, and what you're left with is a timeless conflict between a traditional establishment, which always makes its bread and butter by keeping things the way they are, and an insurgency, that's you guys, driven by a different logic, one where people are trusted to go their own ways, bound together by affection, not by rules. Paul asks the new congregations to make up the rules as they go along, depending on the situation, like the German officer corps, which was given this license to make up the rules in battle as they went along, not like the Americans who sustained 40% more casualties when they outnumbered the Germans 4-1. So Paul asked the new congregations to do this, and as long as they stay true to the core principles, they can manage themselves by where they want to get, by objectives, not by rules. The same way that a fine chef follows intuition. A pinch of this, a pinch of that, instead of a recipe book. You're guided by the goal you want to achieve. The establishment of Paul's day had a recipe for everything. It was in the business of certainty. If somebody steals, cut off his nose. If somebody commits adultery, stone her to death. My wife said, why her? When in doubt, ask the boss. The insurgency followed a logic impossible for recipe book people to comprehend. And I've got to tell you something, impossible for many Christians today to comprehend. If somebody steals your coat, give him your cloak. If somebody hits you on one side of the face, turn the other side to be hit as well. Pay the workmen who labor only for the afternoon the same wage as those who work all day. So many people have been made absurd, trivialized, disenfranchised by the recipe book of schools, colleges, and corporations that a new insurgency is forming all over the world. And here it is in front of me in Brisbane, Australia. The day of the expert is over. The handwriting is on the wall for all institutions, although tyrannies will give them artificial life for a while longer. The young French poet, and I mangle French, so let me try and call him Rimbaud, but I'm sure that's not the way it's pronounced. Looks like Rimbaud. He said something at age 19 which fits the moment that you and I are living in. He said, this is a time of sweat baths, of oceans boiling, of underground explosions, of the planet whirled away, of exterminations sure to follow. Article 28 of the French Declaration of the Rights of Man, published in 1789 and inspired by the American Revolution, reads, quote, one generation cannot subject to its law future generations. The existing rituals between childhood and adulthood don't work anymore. We need to think the rules again from scratch. The alternative school movement is reaching simultaneously backwards and forwards, back to the better open source way we once had in our grasp before corporate dominance took it away, and forward to a quality of human interconnection suggested by MySpace and Facebook and YouTube that only the young can understand. We need to ask the young about those things. One thing unifies all alternative school practice, including yours. That's a rejection of the formula of institutional schooling: obedience, memory, disconnected bits of data, fear, threats, enforced passivity, and paper pencil testing. Even the fat cats are concerned. Forces are on the move around the world which have no sympathy for the unwholesome world of the American-style rich. And while schooling has done its job in removing the danger of disobedience from the ordinary population, it's done that by stripping away the strength from our nation. As I was writing that, I heard on the radio a senior at Virginia Tech, a college in America that was the scene of a recent slaughter. And she was declaring on the radio how happy she was to be finally going back to school to take her final examinations. And the interviewer said to her, "You're happy to be taking your final examinations? Why?" And she said, "I hope this sends a chill up your spine, to see if I learned anything." Here was a perfect product of Spinoza's schooling. She will never be a danger to any important interest, nor will she be of much use when trouble comes. To recover the creativity we once had through voluntary schooling in a voluntary society, we're going to have to abandon forced attendance schooling. Genius has always responded to liberty, not rules. And you have, in fact, abandoned it privately, whether you reinstall it in your home. And this is the end. This is, I swear this is the end, or I'll drop dead. This is called Walkabout Monongahela. That's a little town on a deep green and orange river 40 miles from Pittsburgh, where I grew up, where I was a little boy. I never walked London as a 4-year-old boy, but back in the World War II years of the 1940s, I did walk miles and miles at night at the age of 9. Several nights a week. It was always at least 5 miles in all seasons through the hilly river town of Monongahela, Pennsylvania. Unlike Branson, I didn't walk alone. I always walked with my sister Joan and my mother, who was nicknamed Booty. We walked at night to remain unseen. Nobody knew my mother was back in her hometown with a ruptured marriage, and she wanted to keep it that way. I didn't know, of course, and I wouldn't have known what to make of it if I had. As we walked, we would pause to stare in the lighted windows discreetly. These homeowners had once been high school friends of my mother's, and each home had a story, and my mother knew every one of them. So we roamed happy as pigs, 3 informal anthropologists doing field studies for year after year, total of 4 years of these walks. Those walks were the richest family experience that I personally ever had. And they were my best educational experience, too. 60 years later, I recall them vividly. My degrees at Cornell and Columbia, who are big, fancy, very expensive universities in the United States, was thin and watery, not worth the money it cost. Its details left my memory soon after they happened. But not those walks. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would have had better control at the end if I had some sleep. Thank you. God bless Australia. And God bless Brisbane. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.